Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Weekly Spark, specifically for 2026 color stories. And I think that it's going to be pretty interesting to unpeel the color orange this month, looking at the history of the pigment, some of the things created to make the pigment, some of the things engineered to be orange. I found it fascinating. I will say that orange is my least favorite color. I do love it when it pops with blue, but part of that is because I am a ginger. I have red hair, and so I was trained as a kid that orange didn't work well for me with my coloring. So it's going to be interesting to dive into this zesty orange zest color this month and see where that takes me. This page is going to be kind of the history nerd page where I'm going to have blocks of text, some references, and some things drawn in. So before I go ahead and grab a glue stick and get started, I wanted to invite you to subscribe to the channel and like this page. I'm doing one color story a month, but I'm using that color as the inspiration for the work that I am doing over the course of the month. And there will be one-of-a-kind new collage piece, 5x7, frameable, that is also going to be available as a giveaway in one of the upcoming episodes. So, like and subscribe. I appreciate that. Give me a thumbs up. That really helps the channel, and it keeps you informed when there are new episodes. So, let's try and get the dog to settle down, and I'm going to go ahead and put on some music and whatnot, so future Jenny will talk to you after the video is edited with some of the history and the facts about everything from saffron to amber to carrots to cadmium. Stay tuned. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the images that I chose and some of the history of orange, kind of unpeeling, yes, pun intended, the meanings behind the images, but also the pigments that were used and how the color has evolved over time across cultures with different, symbolisms. It often is seen as a very warm color, representing change, activity, creativity, and then, of course, if you think about the classic traffic cone, it can be a color to represent danger. In Hinduism, orange represents fire, and that's a symbol of inner transformation. The saffron color is the color of the robes a Buddhist monk wears. More on that in a few minutes, but it's the color of illumination. I thought it was interesting that in Persian, Arabic, Sanskrit, and Spanish, the root of the word is the same. Now, in Spanish, it's naranja. That one I know how to pronounce. It's very similar in the other languages, but the fruit was originally cultivated in China. It's often linked to the Dutch. We've got the Olympics coming up, and you often see orange associated with the Dutch, and it's not like on their flag or anything, but it's kind of the national color. That has to do with William, the Prince of Orange, and he's believed to be the father of the Dutch nation. He freed them from rule by Spain. He was assassinated in 1584, so this kind of love and homage of the color orange in his honor dates back a pretty long time. My research said that the Dutch even bred carrots to be orange in his honor. I mean, the orange carrot is exactly what we think of now. We think of fancy carrots, gourmet carrots that might be purple or white, but the classic carrot is orange. Bugs Bunny, what's up, Doc? In looking at some of the other images that I have on the page, the Golden Gate Bridge was painted what has been named Golden Gate Bridge International Orange because it popped so well against the blue sea and sky and was visible in the fog and the mist that tends to be very common in the San Francisco Bay Area. I also have a painting here by Claude Monet, and it is another seascape, but his use of cadmium orange in that pop of the sun amidst all of these other blues and grays was very bold, very complimentary. Now here I'm doing the inking on this crocus flower. So let me talk about saffron a little bit. The three stigma of the flower are harvested in the morning and they're harvested by hand. And those stigma of the flower, that is saffron. Traces of it have been found as a pigment as far back as 50,000 years ago in cave paintings in Iraq. In ancient Sumer, it was used in perfume and medicine. The ancient Greeks used it to dye clothes. Egyptians dyed mummy bandages with saffron. It is the most expensive spice in the world. In 2013, 1 ounce of saffron cost $364. It can take anywhere from 32 to 45,000 flowers to make 1 pound of the spice. Reportedly, Cleopatra used to bathe in it. So it was originally used to dye the Buddhist robes. And so I do have them down below on the left side of the spread, especially with the amazing thing that's happening right now, the Walk for Peace, the Buddhist monks that have been walking from Texas and are headed to DC. I watched some Instagram reels today and I totally was crying. It is just a beautiful, amazing thing. If you haven't seen that, please check it out. And don't miss Aloka, their stray dog that adopted them and has been walking with them. A few last notes on saffron. They say that Alexander the Great used it to dye his hair because he was known as a ginger. That Zoroastrian priests made ink out of saffron and wrote special prayers as spell work to ward off evil. And it was used in medieval manuscripts. A lot of these pigments and a lot of my fascination does come from that medieval era and manuscripts and illuminated manuscripts and the like. I want to pause from the art history, the pigment history, the unpeeling, the color orange for just a sec and talk about the materials that I'm using on this spread. I know from last month that this mixed media book didn't want to take media that was too wet. So I pulled out my Inktense colored pencils, and they're by Derwent, and I love them, but I'd gotten out of habit of using them. As you can see here, you have all the ease of putting things on with colored pencil. And when you see me color the crocus, you're going to see me do a lot of very light layers and very intense layers, and I can control the intensity of the color that way. But they're great. I mean, this is real time. So that was just a quick little dash of orange on that carrot. And, you know, I can get fancy and put in a little gold over here and a little brown over there if I want to give it some variety. But I think I used 2 different greens in the carrot tops. But then you grab a paintbrush and some water, or in my case, I have a water brush, and it blends it. It is absolutely extremely satisfying. It's not so wet as to cause problems with the page. The page wasn't buckling or getting too wrinkled, but it just wasn't watercolor paper that was really porous for a lot of water, a very wet medium. So I'm probably going to use these Derwent Inktense colored pencils quite a bit in these spreads over the course of the year. So just a little aside, because I wanted you to understand and maybe appreciate this product as much as I do. So I'm working on the saffron strands in a little vial here. Let me tell you about one material that was brand new to me called railgar or realgar. It was used in antiquity. I mean, the Romans called it sandarach, and they used it in painting, so it's been around forever. In the Middle Ages, it was used as rat poison because it's arsenic disulfide. I mean, can you imagine the very most poisonous nature of arsenic being used in a painting? It blows my mind. I'm sure it was a great color, but it wasn't a very stable pigment. Its use declined in the 18th century and was eventually replaced by cadmium, which I did mention with, Monet. That's a tube of cadmium paint over there. The paint tube is another rabbit hole that I could go down in its own video about the fact that paint tubes were invented around the time of the Impressionists, and they radically changed the way the painters could go out and paint in plein air. So we might come back to that at another time. I am using some markers here. I want to have some more intense lines to show the kind of sharp delineation and the detail on these saffron strands. So you'll see on the right side of the spread a large chunk of amber with an insect inclusion. And then what's very hard to read in this shot, but it is an image of the amber room. So let me talk about amber for a sec. I'm about to go add color to the crocus, so just jumping around a little bit. Amber, I think we all know it's tree resin. It's fossilized tree resin. It comes from cedars and conifers, and it's often found in the Baltic area. What I didn't realize was that copal is just the same kind of tree sap that's not been fossilized yet, which I thought was really interesting. Now, amber with insects, you of course think Jurassic Park, right? You of course think about the DNA that was supposedly removed from the amber that allowed them to recreate the dinosaurs, and hijinks, shenanigans ensued. But if you take amber further back, the Egyptians used it in embalming, Greeks and Romans used it in jewelry. They actually called it electron, and they associated it with the light and the sun, because of its color for sure. The amber room was an entire room paneled with different, detailed, inlaid pieces of artwork made from amber, set amber in different colors and different shapes in basically mosaics. It was designed by a German named Andreas Schluter, and it was made by a Dane named Gottfried Wolfram. So this was all done in the early 1700s, in 1716, and Frederick I of Prussia had this done and gifted it to Peter the Great of Russia. So it was installed in one of the palaces in Russia. It was 180 square feet, and currently, would be probably close to $150 million. The problem is, the Nazis looted it in 1941, and it's never been recovered. Yeah, ominous pause to let that sink in. We know the Nazis had a machine of gathering artwork, collecting it for their own nefarious purposes, and the amber room had been taken down and stored in boxes by its caretakers to try and keep it safe, and those crates were then confiscated by the Nazis and never found. There is a replica nowadays in Catherine Palace in St. Petersburg, but I'm just greatly in awe of the concept and saddened by the loss of a treasure. Saddened by so many things associated with the Nazis. So there's a illuminated manuscript piece here. It's to the right of the crocus, and that's not something that I really drew a lot to connect to. It was something that I just made note of and put on the page. But there was an orange pigment called minium. It's amazing how you want to pronounce that when it's actually pronounced minium, also known as red lead. So this illuminated manuscript is from the Gladzor Gospels, which was an Armenian illuminated text from the 14th century. Armenia was actually the first country to convert to Christianity in AD 301. I mean, the things you find out when you dig deep into the history of the color orange. A miniature was one who worked with the pigment minium. The eye-catching heading that they would draw and paint was called a miniatura. I mean, this is where we get our word miniature. Minium as a pigment was used in manuscripts very widely until it was replaced in like the 11th century with vermilion. It was lead tetroxide, it was really cheap, and it was bright and easy to make. It was actually used as a cosmetic in ancient Greece and China. But remember, it's lead. It's poison. Yeah. Again, some of the toxic things that you find in this history is mind-boggling. And down below I do have, I've drawn and painted a piece of ginger root, and that is a nod to the redheads called gingers, a hot, insistent, exotic spice likened with the personality of redheads. Ginger originated in Asia and was traded towards the West from as early as the 1st century AD. I do love looking at famous redheads. I mean, we've got Boudica of the Celts, we've got Henry VIII and Elizabeth I of England, all of the pre-Raphaelite women, and, you know, Annie. The sun will come up tomorrow. Or Wilma Flintstone. I mean, okay. And then there's like Jessica Rabbit. I mean, you know, they're good redheads and they're over-the-top redheads. But anyway, that's pretty much most of my notes. I love reading these histories and seeing what comes to mind. I have jotted down some, key facts that I've shared with you. I'm jotting them down in the margins here on this spread. It's just really fascinating and really fun to me, so I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope that it continues to inspire, whether you dig into the history on your own or whether you just want to wait and see the pieces that I create using the color palette for the month. So thank you very much for sticking to the end. I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad you're here. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, stay tuned for more color stories and weekly Spark art journal videos. Usually on Wednesdays, sometimes later in the week, but coming out once a week for sure. And I look forward to seeing you back here on the channel in the future. Hope you get a chance to take it to the page in your art journal this week.